pull this up. What a fun day. I'm live. Yay. I'm glad I'm live. Yay. Hello, everyone. So, today, here we go. I'm still working out the mechanics of the software because I like being able to stream both on YouTube and on Periscope. I hope you guys are able to hear me okay. All right, so today I'm going back over an old episode of the Science Of where I'm talking about sci-fi. So I will be discussing the science of sci-fi. Yay, you can hear me. I have a really nice mic too, and so I'm glad that I'm able to use it. So in the older episode, I used to have like little yellow, I used to have little yellow papers where I wrote stuff on when I started this up back in March, April. So on YouTube, and you can find them on Periscope, I have older episodes where I'm streaming off my camera phone. And so now I have episodes where I'm not using papers anymore of Scientist Mel shorts and the science of, but now I have really awesome PowerPoint capabilities through this streaming software I have. So one episode that I did early on was the science of sci-fi. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. So let's get started. So that's my really cool intro that I like. I have a few, but I really like that one because it's not too busy and it kind of gets to the point. So today we're going to talk about the science of sci-fi. So essentially, what is it? What is sci-fi? Well, it's science fiction. We're going to break that down for just a minute. What I want to talk about today is what are the possibilities and how does science play a role in science fiction? And how does science fiction play a role in science? So let's have a look at this. Science, we know, is a problem-solving process. Hello, everyone. And so science essentially is real. It's something we can touch. We know that's right there, and we're able to do this problem-solving process in order to generate things that make our lives better. Fiction, that's storytelling and it's not real. So when we bring them together, we have this cool aspect of playing along and playing with things that could possibly be reality, but all stemmed from our imagination, which makes sci-fi really, really cool. Whoop. So what I want to do is kind of talk about a few of these. Now, a few of the films that I'm going to touch on: Star Wars, Doctor Who, Jurassic Park, The Stand, Aliens, World War Z, Star Trek, Gattaca. All of these films are various representations of sci-fi. And so I'm going to talk about a few of these in regards to the science behind them and is any of it actually possible. So yeah, is there real science in sci-fi? Yes? No? Maybe? That's kind of where it gets a bit hairy, because sometimes there is actual genuine science in sci-fi, and sometimes it's just a whole lot of bunk, but it's still fun nonetheless. So Star Wars. We're going to talk about Star Wars. So it's not really possible. It breaks physics a lot. Lightsabers have major issues. We do have the Force, which is mass times acceleration. That's real, but it's still fun. Excuse me. So it's not the Force that we would see where we're, like, I'm going to use the Force on you, but it's more of like actual, like gravity, mass, acceleration, these sorts of things. So that's what we're dealing with in regards to the Force. Now, I want to talk about a particular scene in Attack of the Clones that drove me absolutely bonkers. So there's this scene in the very beginning where they're on this giant spaceship and they're going in and they're like, okay, we're going in, we've lost gravity. And so they've lost onboard gravity. And to me, when you lose onboard gravity, that means everybody's going to start floating around, yeah? Well, in this particular scenario, they lose onboard gravity and the ship tilts and they just all slide down. I'm like, but you guys just told me you lost onboard gravity. Why in the world do you have this? So that just like messed me up. I couldn't get past that for a while. Okay. And then the other thing that they do when they're and this is still like within the first 10 minutes of the film, when they're entering the atmosphere of a planet, they kind of catch fire, right? They kind of catch fire a little bit. And then there's these ships that are fire ships. They come along and they're holding their hoses and the water is like a perfect stream to hit the fire. And they're moving at crazy fast speeds. And I'm going, man, that water would just be flying everywhere. It wouldn't just make these perfect little cylinders of water to go and put out this fire. So that kind of made me a little bit crazy. I was just like, what the heck is this? So that was really kind of bothering me a bit. You guys still with me? So now I've moved on to the lightsabers. Are you guys familiar with the lightsabers? Those are pretty fun. Oh, sorry. Ah! I've jumped ahead and I did not mean to. I meant to go back. So lightsabers. Yay, you're still with me. The lightsabers. I want to talk a bit about that. So that's the Sith Army knife right there. Hello. Hello. If you have questions or you have any input, jump in and say something. Tell me something. Tell me what your thoughts are on this and what you think the science is in regards to these sci-fi films that I'm talking about. So in regards to lightsabers, they have issues. And those main issues are making that short blade creation, because lightsabers, they need to be a certain length, the size, the power involved, there's combat issues, and there's also audio-visual problems associated with that. So these are the things that I'm going to talk about with you in regards to lightsabers. There's some things in physics that it's just not possible. So when we're talking about lightsabers, first of all, creating a short blade. The blade needs to stop after a couple of feet, right? Laser beams are light and they don't really stop if we want them to. And the only way that we can get lasers to stop is for something to absorb or reflect that energy. A laser-powered lightsaber would be extremely unrefined in battle. And I think I have a lightsaber right here. So, here is my toy lightsaber. So I have this toy lightsaber. This was actually laser light. It would just keep going. Alright, it wouldn't stop unless I had something stop the actual beam. So a laser-powered lightsaber would be extremely unrefined in battle. It's also a health and safety issue, more so on yourself, if you lapse in attention with your own weapon. Alright, so one solution. One solution would be, instead of having your laser go on forever and ever and ever, you could put a little mirror here and reflect that light back. Then you got your consistent beam right there. That would shorten it. But you wouldn't be able to stab anyone with your beam. You couldn't actually go in and go, and stab them. You couldn't do that, which would kind of stink, right? And also, the tech required to do that would make the lightsaber clunky and less elegant than just a standard metal sword. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. Another problem, the size. Alright, so high-powered laser beams would need loads of tech, While science has given us compact lasers with more intense beams, something with the power to slice through organic material would need massive cooling system to prevent the gear from overheating. So if we have a high-powered laser, it's going to be super freaking hot. We got our mirror going back to reflect it back to give us our short beam. Your handle's going to overheat. And so you're going to have a proper cooling system. So this does not make for a light weapon, and the cooling system alone stored in a giant backpack makes this less feasible than a standard metal sword. Okay, so we've talked about the massive cooling system that we would have to have. We have yet to talk about the power needed. So far, you have a mirror-capped laser blade, no stabbing's not allowed, with a cooling system on your back, and now we need the energy. You could not power something so large with store-bought batteries. You'd likely need something closer to plugging into the main electrical circuit of a house. So, get you an infinitely long extension cord while fighting on indoor, plugging into an Imperial base outlet. That is what you would need to do to get the power for the blade. Combat issues. All right, we know a laser beam is easily reflected, right? So we know a laser beam is easily reflected. So if you are Jedi, your Sith Lord opponent wouldn't need the Force to defeat you. They could defeat you with a mirror. They could also turn your own lightsaber's blade back against you. There's also no fun clashing with the lightsaber blades because the beams are light and would pass through each other. So I would just want a metal sword at that point because, you know, these look cool and all, but you can't clash your laser beams with your lightsabers. They just pass through each other. So there's none of that fun stuff, which kind of sucks. You know, I'd much rather have to so I don't know, I think actual swords. All right. The last thing to do with our lightsabers. Visual and audio effects. Lightsabers are cool because of their different colors that glow and they go whoosh, whoosh, whoosh noises. Those make it really, really cool. Lasers can't be seen from the side without very dusty, foggy, thick particle types of air. So we see the blow that little powder everywhere to see if there's those lasers. That's the same thing even with high-powered lasers. A lightsaber would be basically invisible. You could shoot it straight at someone's eye, and they could see it then, and it would probably be the last thing they ever saw, but they would see your lightsaber at that point. Now, if you shake a flashlight, does it make a sound? Well, perhaps just the batteries would be shaking. Lasers make no noise. So lasers don't make the sound that's that whole whoosh, whoosh. I mean, that's just gone. I think I'd just rather have a metal sword, if I'm honest, and just maybe stick it in some kerosene and just light it on fire. To me, that just sounds a lot cooler than having a real life laser beam shooting at it. It's just too much. So, what are we dealing with in regards to this? Fire, fire, fire. Okay, real life lightsabers would be so clunky. You have a giant backpack of your cooling system. You need a really long cord in order to plug it into an Imperial base outlet. Say, hold on, Darth Vader. My lightsaber's low. Let me go. Where's you got a charging station for your lightsabers? Let me plug it in really fast, you know. You can't see or hear it at all. And there's none of that fun clashing or the whoosh. You know, it's just not there. And it kind of stinks when that's the case. And you're like, I don't want to do that, you know. So, that's Star Wars. Now let's talk about the film that I like to call the worst scientists ever. Prometheus. It's horrible. I don't know where they found these scientists, but the scientists they found go on this $1 trillion mission. They make basic mistakes that no reputable scientist would ever make. Evolution doesn't work the way that they have it work in this film. And honestly, just watch Aliens instead. Aliens is closer to actual real science than Prometheus. So let me talk about all the problems of Prometheus. All right? The first rule in a science lab is don't lick the spoon. All right? So the android from Prometheus, as soon as they get off the ship, goes into this foreign alien planet. He picks up goo on a wall on the alien planet. All right? He just like grabs it and he's just like, ooh, look at this goo. And they're like, you should probably not touch that. That's what the other scientists say. And he's like, yeah, okay. He just walks right back on the ship, doesn't undergo quarantine, just starts making people's lunch and dinner and stuff and making tea. And I'm going, he just had alien goo all over his hands. Okay, let's talk about the scientists. People take off their space helmets when one discusses how the atmosphere is like Earth. Now, normally, scientists would be like, oh yes, this is great. Well, the other scientists tell the one scientist, don't take off your helmet. You don't know what's here in the atmosphere. And so the one scientist goes, it's okay. And he takes off his helmet and they're like, oh, he's not dead in 5 seconds. I'm going to take my helmet off too. But microbes, bacteria, viruses, they could be in this atmosphere. All right. And there's no respectable scientist would do that. Then they bring a specimen onto the ship and they quarantine that. They're like, well, here's this alien specimen animal thing. We need to totally quarantine it, and take extra precautions. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, but who cares at this point? Because the android has touched everything with alien slime hands, and people are likely breathing foreign bacteria and viruses. So I don't understand why you're quarantining this one animal at this point, because you've contaminated your entire ship with your android and the air. So I'm sitting here like losing my mind. Then the medical equipment. Okay, the medical equipment on the board is only programmed for men and not women. And so a woman performs major surgery on herself with little to no pain meds and then tries to fight, aliens. Okay. Just, why would you only have equipment programmed for men on a ship that was like 50% women? I don't understand. And then lastly, evolution does not produce a brand new species immediately from a former one. That literally happens in the film. The alien beings take genetic code and immediately the next version of themselves is something that's so unrecognizable to the previous version. It would be like me having a dog baby with a human face, like actual four-legged animal. It's just so unlike the previous version. It's just crazy. Patriarchy at its worst. For real, man. The medical equipment was only for dudes. And I'm sitting here going, what the heck is going on? I don't get this. And so it's irritating for me as a scientist to sit and watch Prometheus and go, wait, what? Just, woo. So, let me talk about a movie that is possible in some ways. Aliens! Aliens is kind of possible. There may be life on different planets that evolve differently from us. That's absolutely possible, and there's no reason to think otherwise. We could have planets that have varying atmospheres. So instead of sugar, like glucose and carbon dioxide and oxygen atmospheres, what if it's methane? Perhaps methane is a fuel for these types of organisms. So it's entirely possible that life could be different on other planets. And deep space travel might be likely, But there are some things that we have to overcome in regards to science. And so let's talk about a few of those things. All right, first of all, things to overcome. Exposure to cosmic radiation long term. So we have had people in space that are able to withstand being in that small, closed, confined type of situation for a year or more. We have the International Space Station. We've seen the twin study that NASA did that gave us a whole lot of information about how space affects the body. So we do have to overcome that exposure to cosmic radiation because we don't know how long a person really could be in space. Are we talking 10 years? Are we talking 5 years? We're talking 20? Cardiovascular concerns, including the heart pumping and respiration, in order to keep that system healthy, we normally have to have some kind of gravity for that, because gravity is also contributes to our muscle tone as well as our bone density. So when astronauts are in space, they suffer muscle and bone loss. So they have to constantly exercise due to the lack of gravity in order to retain that muscle density. If you've never seen astronauts who come back from space after 6 months, a year, they can barely walk. So that's a real issue that has to be overcome. Psychological issues associated with working with the same people, as well as being confined and isolated in space and so far away from the planet. Those are things that people have to take into consideration if you're going to be with a team for 10 years. And then you're also going to have to be exercising every day. It's a confined space. You're not really going to be able to leave the ship so much, especially if you're in deep space. So things like that have to be overcome. Now, nature has a way of removing things we don't use. One thing they found out in regards to the NASA's twin study is that the twin that was in space, certain genes were shut off. So we have environmental triggers that maintain the activity of specific parts of our genetic code. So this kind of thing is something that astronauts in science has to overcome before we can get involved in deep space travel. So the next thing I want to talk about, zombies. When I was a high school teacher, I had a whole entire unit just on zombie science, and zombie science is pretty fun. Now, things that we got to think about in regards to zombies: we can't reanimate the dead. We just can't. The zombie apocalypse would really be over in a few weeks, and I'll tell you why. But if we think about a virus-inducing zombie-like behavior, that's entirely possible. So let's talk a little bit about a few of these things. Hope you guys are having fun. You guys are quiet. I'm like really late today, but I discussed why I was really late today yesterday, so that's okay. So let's talk about zombies. You can't reanimate the dead unless they are properly put in cryostasis, and even then, they are dead and awaiting a cure for whatever disease they had. Yay, you're listening. So, we just can't reanimate dead tissue. There are certain processes that occur where there's cellular death, and then you have these biochemical processes that just shut things down consecutively. So trying to undo that would be extremely difficult, and let alone to do it with a virus, a zombie virus in that regard. The zombie apocalypse would likely be over in 2 weeks or less due to things we know called bacteria and predators. Hey, Dennis Hands, he joined. Fit Walker's here listening, and Comic Girl's around. So, if we're talking about the zombie apocalypse, it would probably be over in 2 weeks because we have predators and we have bacteria. Bacteria would start rotting the flesh because that's one of the stages. Yeah, can you imagine? Why don't we have I used to watch The Walking Dead, excuse me, But it got so depressing for me because there was absolutely no hope. Every season, I was just more and more depressed. And I thought, man, just forget it. So it's kind of crazy. So what I think would probably ruin the film is if they had like bear attacks of the zombies. If there was like a legit zombie apocalypse, I would just go to the woods where there are bears and wolves and just ride it out, because they're going to take care of things, So in about 2 weeks, I suspect the zombie apocalypse would be over because of bacteria decaying all of the rotting corpses. And then you also have predators, bears and wolves ripping apart stuff. So just stay in your house or head over to the pub for a few weeks and wait for this whole thing to blow over, right? Now, in regards to a virus that induces zombie-like behavior, yes, let them eat cake. The olfactory sensors that are close to your brain, because you have all kinds of really, really, really cool stuff going on between your nose and your brain. A lot of our memories are associated with smell. And that's because those particular sensors are really close to part of our brain that is associated with memories. Now you also have your frontal lobe, which is then close to that area. So if an airborne virus were able to enter via the nose and affect that part of your brain, it could shift your perception of reality and cause you to forget your loved ones. Also, it could cause prion proteins to mess up the other proteins in your brain, inducing cravings and uncontrollable behavior, because keep in mind, your frontal lobe is part of your morality and decision making. When there was a story, oh gosh, I talked about this in one of the other episodes of the Science Hub when I was still streaming from my phone, about I forgot his name now, but it's on there. It's just like right on the tip of my tongue. There was a particular worker who was working on the railroad, and there was a railroad spike that went up through his chin and severed his frontal lobe from the rest of his brain. He started to have behavior that was like that of a person that couldn't control themselves in regards to decision making and morality. So if we have a virus that's able to affect that part of the brain, hello Brady, hello. Is that a new vegan zombie shop at Whole Brains? So if we were able to generate an airborne virus that could be inhaled through your nose and affect the frontal lobe part of your brain and also affect those associated with memories, we could have a zombie apocalypse with zombie-like behavior, but not with reanimated dead tissue. So that's a possibility. That is very much a possibility. So the next thing we're going to talk about, where are my Whovians at? Any Whovians here? I'm a Doctor Who fan. River Song is my girl. 2020 election. So this is River Song, and she's like, spoilers! So Doctor Who, in regards to time travel, it's probably a no. Time travel is one of those things that we don't if we get into like time space, that's a bit different, where time is different in different parts of the universe. But if we're getting to where just standard time travel within the same plane of existence, and we're talking about on the Earth moving forward or backward, yeah, probably not, because the future has multiple possibilities. So what we really only have is now. Multiple universe and string theory, that's a possibility. So to move between planes of multiple universes, if we had the abilities to do that, that could be a thing, but that's still kind of far-fetched and not entirely agreed upon as something that's solid science. Sonic screwdrivers, though, very possible. Yeah, there's going to be a female doctor next. So that's pretty exciting. So in regards to the sonic screwdrivers, being able to make a particular device that can fix a thing depends entirely on the wavelengths that are used and whether we're dealing with infrared, microwaves, and what exactly are we trying to fix, and is that electronic device going to respond to that? So those are things that we can kind of think about. We already have communication via Wi-Fi, so why not be able to fix something with a particular device in hand, especially technology? Time travel makes for interesting sci-fi. We're doing the time travel right now. Yes, I'm a time traveler right now, and I'm traveling nanosecond by nanosecond, even small bits of time, so that's always fun. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next Doctor Who. Unified forces in the screwdriver. I have a sonic screwdriver, coincidentally. See, here it is right here. I've fixed you. Have I fixed you yet? I do have a sonic screwdriver. It's one of my favorite things. Somebody who's like a brother from another mother gave it to me for my birthday, and I've had it for years. I love it. It's 10 screwdriver. Thank you. So let's talk about Star Trek. Star Trek has inspired scientists to do all kinds of things. Now, in regards to warp drive, I'm fixed. No more kids. You guys are just wrong. So Star Trek has been inspiring science for a long time. Now, in regards to warp drive, it did do an entire show just on warp drive. I should probably go back and revisit that with warp bubbles. So it is possible that in regards to warp drive, NASA is still doing tests on warp bubbles. So I'll talk about this in a second. Now, in regards to transporters, maybe, but the current tech we have right now, we're talking very little, and it's a long way off. But it has inspired portable devices. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a tutorial on warp bubbles. All right. So we know warp drive. It's going to be E equals mc squared. That's our treasured energy equation. And so we know that energy is going to be equal to mass times the speed of light squared. Lieutenant, you are a great role model. I agree. Hello. So if you're just joining, we're talking about warp drive now. Warp bubbles. Yes, that's a thing. So if we're moving at warp drive, all right, that's what we want. And that's what Star Trek kind of tells us. We have this, and it's like warp 7, and like, we got to hurry up and get out of here. Phineas Gage, that was the guy with the spike. I knew it. I was like, what is his name? Phineas Gage is the guy that had the spike that separated his frontal lobe from the rest of his brain, that gave him behaviors that were quite questionable because he wasn't able to have good decision making. I need to do one on the brain again and talk about that. The warp drive. Okay. So warp drive. We know in order for things to move fast, we have to overcome their mass, right? So if we want something to move at the speed of light, because energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So if we're even able to achieve the speed, just the square, speed of light squared, when we rearrange that equation, we essentially have to divide energy by mass. So the greater the amount of mass, guess what? The greater the amount of energy we have to have. So getting things to go at speed of light, or even squared, we have to have a huge amount of energy that we don't even know is possible. Are warp bubbles even a hypothesis? They're actively being worked on and tested. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to be able to kind of bend space a little bit to where once it enters a bubble, it propels it forward faster, and then it kind of pushes it this way. So once it enters the bubble, it enters it, and then as it leaves, it propels it forward. Now, it can't do that on a massive scale, but if you have little bitty bubbles, because that requires so much energy to try to be able to do that, NASA's working on teeny tiny warp bubbles. I can link you to that study when I get a chance, and I'll put it on my website. I did do a talk on YouTube all about warp bubbles. So I'm going to really touch on right now because I don't have that information in front of me, but it is available on my scientistmail.com, youtube.com/c/scientistmail. There should be a talk on there about warp bubbles. It's also on my Periscope. So, yes, so they're able to do just small little bits, teeny tiny small bits. But if they're able to get a whole bunch of those in a row, that might do it. But just moving it itself is not going to be capable because they have to overcome all of that mass, and the energy for that would be huge. So that's not entirely possible. If you like the Energizer Bunny, a little bit. So the thing with Star Trek, it's inspired so many types of tech. How small is teeny tiny? You know, I don't have the numbers in front of me, and that's a very good question. But what I'll do is, if you follow me on Twitter, I'll find the information for NASA in regards to warp bubbles and any other studies I find and shoot them your way, and I'll link them to this particular broadcast. So when it comes to Star Trek, something that we need to consider is that science fiction has inspired many things, including portable health monitors and devices. It's inspired smartphones and tablets that we use even now. So while science fiction is fiction, it does spark the imagination of scientists to find things to make our lives better. So that's something that science fiction kind of gives us, is an opportunity to be able to imagine and think about things that are really, really, really cool. Flip phone communicators, that's right. Sorry, my nose is itching. All right, so let's talk about the films that I think are way more plausible than some of the ones that we've been seeing. So The Martian, minimal physics breaking. It just breaks it a little bit. They seem to overcome the bone and muscle density kind of thing, you know. Company is coming, that equals the nose itch. Possibly, you never know. Jurassic Park, likely, but with mammoths, where there's some things I'm going to talk about in regards to that. Gattaca, that's the thing that we're going to experience a lot sooner than people expect. So these different films, some of them are cautionary tales, and rightly so. If we look at Martian, there is physics breaking in regards to leaving the planet at the very end of the film. There is a bit of physics breaking, and I'm like, ooh, you know, kind of just threw thermo out the door a little bit, you know, and so you're kind of like, ah. And also the planet scene with farming on Mars. My mother is a master gardener, and she loves astronaut movies. Apollo 13 is her jam. But she said she had such an issue with The Martian because of the fact, she was like, I don't think he could farm on Mars. That soil there is so different. And so she went on this huge spiel about how you know, the soil on Mars would not be viable. And I'm like, but he brought in this. She's like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Battlestar Galactica and our devices. Toasters, yes, BSG is great. Interesting thing about Battlestar Galactica, I actually went to Comic-Con in 2011, and I went to the Battlestar Galactica panel. They actually did have a science advisor there who was able to answer the science questions associated. They paid a person who actually has a doctorate in physics, paid a person just to sit there and verify that what they were doing was within capabilities of science. Now, given you have to take some liberties, like the deep space stuff, as far as the body having issues with certain things. But in the gravity issue, they clearly overcame gravity. So there are some liberties you have to take. But yes, the Big Bang Theory TV show. I suppose I'm so behind on that, but I don't really know. I'm not really a huge fan of that show, but I guess that's just me. So The Martian, there are some issues, but it's still pretty plausible. Jurassic Park. First of all, dinosaurs have feathers now. We know that. But if we look at the science, DNA needs to be about 10,000 years old or less. You can't just fill in genes for the whole code, as you could do something called shifting the reading frames. So anytime you have a codon removed, or you have a single point mutation, a particular mutation, whether it's, G, C, A, T. Those are the 4 different nucleotides we have. Oh, you think they keep a physicist? Yes, they do. On the Big Bang Theory set, they do have a resident physicist there who does kind of go with the jokes. So in Jurassic Park, DNA has a shelf life. And so after about 10,000 years, it starts to fall apart and you lose a lot of the code. So any code that you have in regards to dinosaurs is going to have massive holes in it. You can't just go in and fill in things because you don't know if it's going to shift things around or move them back and forth. Because if you shift a reading frame, if you go in and start filling in code, your different enzymes read it in 3s. So you have codons that are read in 3s. So you might have CAT, like cat. What a job checking Sheldon's math. So you might have 3, like CAT. Let's just say CAT is cytosine, adenine, and thymine. You remove the A, and then you happen to slip on the A over here, then you have CTA. It's a completely different thing. Or if you remove a nucleotide altogether, and over here is a G, you no longer have CAT, you have CTG, and everything's shifted over one, which is completely different amino acid sequence. I should probably do a show on genetics, as far as, I think I have done a show on genetics. Anyway, I should probably update. So the point being, you can't just fill in genetic code because you could shift the way that the proteins are made. That's the point I'm trying to make. And it can do different things in the organism once you put it all together that way. So there's not a lot, Jurassic Park takes a lot of liberties. But if you have DNA full sequence or close to that, like in woolly mammoths, which is only about 10,000 years old and well preserved, then we could do something similar to that in regards to Jurassic Park. Now, Gattaca. Gattaca. I don't really have any scientific issues with this film at all. Now we're back in the truck. Yes. That's a good part of the Jurassic Park film. That's fun. All right, so Gattaca. It's a very real future for us, especially with gene editing and employers being able to screen you genetically. That's a thing. Genetic screening is a real thing, and the laws are not federal in regards to employers in genetic screening. Now, in the film Gattaca, they're able to genetically engineer nearly perfect humans. Now, in that film, it's illegal for employees to discriminate based on genetic code. But all you have to do is shake somebody's hand, drink a little bit of water, and then they're able to take your genetic code and screen you for potential illnesses or diseases that you may or may not have. Now, in our world, like I said, genetic screening is a real thing that employers can do, and the laws are not federal in regards to employers using genetic screening. Only 14 states have put into place laws to prevent genetic discrimination by employers. And even then, they're a bit shaky. They're not as solid as they need to be. So gene editing with CRISPR technology will allow us at some point, right now it's still really early on, but it will allow us at some point to make nearly perfect humans, eliminating the lesser genes. For instance, myopia, being able to see far away, eliminating the need for glasses. In the film Gattaca, they talk about that's the first gene that they try to get rid of because that shows that you weren't a genetically engineered child that's nearly perfect. And so that's one thing that kind of says, oh wait, that person wears glasses, they're not genetically perfect, we better not give them a job. So the thing that you have to remember in regards to genes is that just because you have a gene for a disease does not mean you will get that disease. There are some people that have the gene for diabetes but never actually suffer the illness because they've managed to prevent environmental triggers from turning it on. Basically, we are screwed on a state-by-state basis. Hello. So what happens is, if you have the gene, we'll use diabetes for example. If you have the gene for diabetes and you're able to eat a diet and exercise to where that gene is never turned on or, and expressed, then, you don't have the disease. Aren't our imperfections a sign of future perfection? Well, possibly. Now we're getting all philosophical. So there are environmental factors associated with diseases, especially ones that are hereditary and genetic. So if you've not seen the film Gattaca, it's Gattaca, all of them are nucleotides, that's quite clever. It is a good film and a cautionary tale in regards to ethics, genetics, and discrimination. So, the last little thing I want to kind of show you, and it's by Albert Einstein. Imagination is more important than knowledge. And so when you're thinking about things and you're going through and you look at sci-fi, it's important. We cannot have science without imagination. And in that, we need art to inspire scientists. And sci-fi, through that, drives us scientists nuts. I mean, though it drives us crazy to sit there and go, gosh, Star Wars. They said the gravity fields were off, and then they turn sideways and everybody slides down. Like, but you said the gravity fields are off. Why aren't they floating? Even though sci-fi drives us scientists nuts on inaccuracies, it gives us things to drive our work. So sci-fi is inherently important to us in that regard. And because warp drives are what we need in real life, I did talk about warp bubbles earlier. So if you missed the earlier portion of the broadcast, you can always go back and rewatch it. And if you're on my YouTube channel, or if you look on my channel here on Periscope, you'll see I actually do an entire talk just on warp drive. So, sci-fi is inherently important to the imagination because it is more important than knowledge. We cannot perform science or progress without imagination. So it's really, really, really important that we have that. So that has been my talk on the science of sci-fi. Excuse me. So let me show you a few of my sources, and I'll post these sources on my website. Scientistmail.com is where I put all of my slides. Excuse me. So if you go to my website, scientistmail.com, I will have the slides from the show here where you have access to it. If you have questions and you're on Periscope, I have the same name on Twitter. Send me messages there. You can go to scientistmail.com. Send me an email through that site and ask me questions there. I'm also on Facebook as well as YouTube. I want to take a moment to thank my patrons, and I'll put my website up for you guys to see. Tony, Lauren, Jen, Carl, Melanie, Anthony, Paula, Carrie, Keith, Zachary, Patrick, Tony, Graham, Tristan and Jennifer. They are part of my patreon.com. And so this is the first time you share things. So if you like what I do, I also have an audio podcast called Hey Scientist Mel. Hashtag Hey Scientist Mel. I'm the science teacher you never had but should have. Aw, Dennis brought me here. Well, thank you, Dennis, for sharing. So, if you like what I do, my patrons start at $1 a month. You can check me out there. Here's all of my websites. Okay, scientistmel.com is the main place to find me. And if you can just remember that, it'll link you to everything else on as far as my social media, all of my links for where you can see my videos. I'm on Facebook. And I do have, like I said, a podcast called hashtag Hey Scientist Mel, and I'm about to have the 8th episode go live for the general population. My patrons on Patreon get it a week early. So, that has been the science of sci-fi. I'm a couple hours late this time. I didn't mean to be, but see, I've actually got my picture behind here. There's me. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But I usually stream 10 a.m. Saturdays, Central Standard Time. I was 12 p.m. today. I started a new job this week because this isn't paying all the bills. But it's a 9-to-5 type of job, which means I'm still able to stream. I'm still able to do my podcast. I can still write things for you to use. Go to scientistmel.com. I have quizzes there with achievements you can unlock to test your knowledge. And hit me up on Twitter or anywhere else that, you want to talk to me. I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet. So thanks for hopping by. New job, yes. I'm working with DNA and recombinant proteins, so it's exciting stuff. So I can talk more about it later. I'm in Germany, so I catch you when you can. Helps I have you set in your notifications. Yay! And if you can't catch me live, all of my videos stay up forever on Periscope, and now that I'm streaming to YouTube as well, they're automatically put there too. So you can always come back and check it out later. But thanks for hopping on here. This is so much fun. You guys were great. And I hope you have a fantastic Saturday, and I will see you next Saturday. And like I said, I have an audio podcast if you want to take me along with you. I usually update an episode every week. So learn a bit of science and take it with you, and we can talk about all the cool things. Bye. Have a great day. Squishy science hugs.